I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary. Then I was reprimanded by the fake news. They said, what about love, religion, and God? I said, I agree. Let's put God number one. Let's put religion number two. Love, I don't know. We got to put that number three, I guess, right? And then it's tariff.
Put me in a coma, number 4, please. You don't even have to wake me up. But anyway, tariffs, I guess, is his 4th favorite word then. And you're gonna be hearing a lot about it very soon, actually by tomorrow, because both Canada and Mexico will apparently have, unless something changes, 25% tariffs slapped on them. But don't worry, I'm pretty sure we don't import or export anything to those little old countries of Canada and Mexico. But anyway, he also, this is not long before we went live, added that the 10% tariffs on China also could start at the same time. We don't have a lot of details on that, so we're gonna be focusing on Canada and Mexico. But according to the Wall Street Journal, it might still change because Trump aides are apparently looking for an 11th hour deal to dial back the tariffs before they go into effect. So I have a lot more on this, a lot more details and the implications, the stakes in this. But what's your quick bet? Tomorrow, are there 25% tariffs on Canada, Mexico?
Yes, but I'm gonna explain in more detail in a little bit how I think he's gonna lose this poker game, because he keeps bluffing, and at some point you get your bluff called, but then there are cascading consequences we'll explain. But there is also something that is an interesting strategy that Trump is doing that is potentially smart. Well, let's see.
Yeah, we'll see. And I'm uncomfortable with the word smart being applied to him because I saw an interaction with a reporter from earlier today where they asked him about what the effects of having those tariffs on oil will be coming in through Canada and Mexico, which we looked it up, and 70% of the oil we import comes through those two countries. 25% tariff on that seems significant. And it was clear from his response, did not know whether oil was included in it. And he tried to like brush it aside saying, yeah, we're gonna decide on that maybe tonight, which I would hope, because it goes into effect tomorrow. And he doesn't know if 70% of our imported oil is gonna be a quarter more expensive. So I'm a little bit worried. Now,
John, can I say, before the show I read, they already knocked that down to 10%. The oil.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Well, and I'm glad to hear that too. I like the consistency because I heard from Trump supporters all throughout the election, we're voting to raise our gas prices only about 10%. So they were very specific about that, and I noted it at the time because I thought that was weird. But anyway.
But there's a second reason why too, sorry. It's because the oil companies were among his biggest donors.
Of course. Right? Remember, they were supposed to give him $1 billion and then they'd make out like bandits. They don't want this. But of course, we import and export a ton from Canada and Mexico. It's cars and consumer products, let alone lumber. I mean, like the 1-2 punch to our capacity to build more housing, of getting rid of a significant chunk of people who work as contractors and tradesmen, and then also jacking up the price of the raw materials to build homes, seems like it's gonna make it difficult going forward. But he's saying we have to do this, and we have to do this because Canada and Mexico are letting both migrants come into the US, even though the border crossing numbers are basically nothing at this point, as well as letting fentanyl through, which Justin Trudeau, notably, he's always bragging about how much fentanyl he lets come into the country through Canada. But anyway, the Canadian minister responsible for the border said that they might try to help out in this. They're gonna create a new North American fentanyl strike force, and I think it'll work. Since it's not an actual problem, I think the strike force can probably fix it. I think that Canada's gonna get on that. And Mexico has created a similar working group with the Trump administration on migration issues. They say they're gonna expand that in the future. And US officials said that President Sheinbaum's government is cooperating with Trump's demand on the southern border and has agreed to receive expelled non-Mexican migrants seeking asylum in the US, a significant concession to the US. So they're gonna do that. But they've also made clear that if these tariffs do happen, they're gonna do what we said they do all along, retaliatory tariffs, which are going to make it harder for American businesses to sell their products abroad, which is gonna have consequences because there are literally tens of millions of American jobs that rely on that sort of international trade. And here's an example of how that might work. This is Justin Trudeau.
If the president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response. A purposeful, forceful,
but reasonable, immediate response. It's not what we want, but if he moves forward, we will also act.
Okay, now they didn't really bow down. They said they'd work a little bit on some of these issues, but Justin Trudeau is also saying we'll do the exact same thing, which everyone knows they will. And so as it's been developing today, it looks like Trump is sort of dialing it back. They might limit it to steel and aluminum, as well as computer chips, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and God only knows what else, but not necessarily everything, because it looks like they've sort of called his bluff a little bit, or maybe it's the concessions if we want to be really charitable about it, but what do you think?
I think that goes towards a strategy that I think is not such a bad one politically. Okay, first of all, the brother never does his homework, so of course he doesn't know, and then he says these absurd things like, and number 4 is tariff. And then if you said to him, okay, well, how about MAGA? MAGA's a good word. Oh, you'd be like, okay, fine. MAGA's number 4, tariff now drops to number 5. How about the word Trump? Oh, you're right, Trump goes all the way to number 1, then God is number 2. So tariff is down to 6. So he's a comical character, I get it, right? And then in terms of the fentanyl, does a lot of fentanyl come in from Mexico and even Canada these days? Yes, as it turns out it does. Is that the real problem? Of course not. So first of all, American corporations created the problem with Oxy, got people hooked on it, and then they went on to other harder drugs like fentanyl. That was the cause of the problem, but if you blame American corporations, your donors get pissed. So then you instead do this nonsense, oh, the real problem is the supply. It's never supply, that's never the answer. It's always demand, but cutting demand down is very, very difficult. Demagoguing about supply is easy,
100%.
Right? Oh, it's those dastardly Vancouverians, or whatever you actually call them. All right. Anyway, so now to the bluff and the strategy. So Trump does this all the time, and he'll probably do it here too. So he'll go in and he'll go, I want this, and I'm gonna put a big consequence and punishment on you. And now the main weapon he uses is tariffs. And then the other side goes, oh yeah, we'll do likewise. But then they go out and they start to negotiate. Okay, first of all, as a strategy there, if we're being honest, that's not so bad because you're getting them to renegotiate something that we had already agreed to, but now hopefully to more of our advantage, right? But if you do that over and over again, at some point people are gonna call your bluff. And when you do, and now you're in a trade war, and now everybody's tariffing up 25%, prices are going up, people are getting mad at you. So now that's where the interesting and potentially smart part of the strategy comes in. And you'll see Trump do this a lot, and we'll see if he does it in this case. He'll then take a small concession because he's losing, right? Because once a bluff is called and things are going poorly and the prices are going up and his poll numbers are going down, then he'll take a minor concession and pretend it was gigantic, and then call off the whole thing. And then he'll go, see, I solved it. I got America free of fentanyl. Not free of fentanyl. I got Mexico to do this huge thing. They probably did like 5%, right? But we'll break it down for you, each one of those. So if he did a good deal and he got a lot more for us, I'll be honest, you know us. I'll say it was a pretty good strategy, right? If you got a terrible deal and they're bragged about it, that means his bluff got called and it was BS. And that's gonna start to wear thin when he does it over and over and over again. And at some point, you go all in, your bluff gets called, oops. And then you have a catastrophic trade war that spirals out of control and prices skyrocket. So let's hope it doesn't go there, and let's hope that he extricates himself from the mess that he's about to cause. All right, Ramesh.
Yeah, first of all, who says God is his favorite word, he has some strange ways of handling Bibles, either not touching them or holding it upside down. Remember back during the Black Lives Matter protests. Look, as far as these tariffs are concerned, and this discussion that he raised at the and during the the Bureau External Revenue Services, we have to look at examples that date back to COVID, where supply chains forced the inflation prices to go higher because corporations decided to charge us that much more because of these very issues, right? So similarly, tariffs are likely because these corporations are not interested in paying the cost themselves. Tariffs are likely to have a very negative effect on inflationary pricing. And so this is something that we should be wary of and call this administration out on. if their strategy is not successful. You're very right, Cenk, that they're taking a very aggressive approach to everything and anything, which they did in the first term, but now it's even more full-scale assault and definitely a lot more vindictive kinds of actions. But at the same time, the economics of all this and whether this will help others, let alone consumers or all of us as citizens, is extremely dubious. I don't see a lot of evidence of how. I'm not for these NAFTA and neoliberal free trade agreements, but tariffs don't necessarily in and of themselves benefit. They may not benefit American workers and consumers. And as far as the fentanyl question is concerned, this is a very sad thing to say, but these are coming into our country because there's demand for these things. And if you actually look at the US-Mexico example in particular, fentanyl is imported because there's demand for that. And we export guns to Mexico, which is why the cartels have so many guns. In Mexico, you don't see sort of guns being produced in mass the way you do in this country, because guns and assault weapons in particular are legal. And then just the last thing I want to say is in terms of tariffs also potentially being applied to China, I think we're going to see that as another immature response to the DeepSeek revelations that you guys have been covering over the last couple of days. Because the whole DeepSeek revelations really revealed that China could do so much to emulate our AI systems, if not actually improve upon them, with so much in terms of costs by bypassing these extremely expensive chips, at least in part. So we'll see how this all plays out, but rhetorically it's sort of standard Trump. But at the same time, whether this actually benefits us all or benefits American workers or consumers per his promises needs to be seen. Maybe the energy costs will go down because we're gonna make climate change that much worse by drilling the Arctic and Alaska. Yes. We'll see.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.